welcome everybody to our first weekly AMA with our co-founder Max Sanchez. We're going to kind of run this the way we did last time, where Max is going to speak. If you guys have any questions for him or the team in general, just raise your hand, and Josh, Phil, myself will call on you as soon as possible. If you're more comfortable typing your answer or your question rather in general chat, please feel free to do that, and we'll do our best to address those as well. But without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Max.
Cool, sounds good. Thanks, Rick. Before we jump into questions, just wanted to give a couple quick updates. As everyone knows, we did our open season testing over the weekend and got a lot of great community energy around it, a lot of great testing data from it. And so to give some final statistics on some of the performance we saw, we had a little over 8,200 unique EOAs participate into at least one tunneling transaction. In total, they did over 44,000 tunneling transactions, and we saw a gas peak above 11,000 gigaway, and so some people were starting to refer to gas in the teraway measurement, which was pretty funny. And we were sustained over the 24-hour period about 84% of all the gas consumption on Sepolia for tunneling, and we had a 1 hour sustained peak of 88%. So a lot of good testing data for kind of the edge case of how the tunnel performs when we're the majority of the Ethereum fee consumption. Obviously not a situation we're actually expecting in mainnet, but it is still a good thing to be able to prepare for, especially because we did find before the open season, but once we started getting a lot of load on the tunnel, we found that the fee estimation that L1 Ethereum nodes give for gas limits is way off for the tunneling contract, and so that's something on the Ethereum L1 node side, but it is something we have to work around in our UI. So we added that temporary workaround with the fixed gas limit, which is good most of the time, but this testing helped provide a little bit of extra testing for the most extreme cases that we can compare against and then use for being able to set stuff properly in the mainnet UI. So huge thanks to everyone who participated in that. It was super successful, and we are no longer spamming Sepolia, if that's what you want to call it. Sepolia gas fees are now down to 0 gigaway, so if you're testing anything else on Sepolia, it should be cheap now. But yeah, that went well. As far as other kind of general updates, we are doing some big infrastructure migrations behind the scenes. So no action item at the moment, but we do expect to get on much more stable infrastructure very soon. We're having some issues with the hosting provider we chose and how some of their cloud products work we're not happy with. So moving off of them onto a hosting provider should be a lot better for our needs. We are still seeing extreme traffic on the back end, and so while we're doing that migration, we're not scaling up the old infrastructure, so nothing's really improving beyond what it was, late last week. But we should very soon move over to that new infrastructure, which should be better both from a uptime perspective and also our ability to scale out and handle load. So that's moving along. We're also working on some tech stuff behind the scenes. We got some cool tech demos coming up for some stuff around HVM that we're really excited to show people. And I think those are the high-level components, but why don't we dive into questions?
All right, we have 2 hands up. I'm just going to call on people in the order they requested. Invitation sent to Exotic.
Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Well done. I appreciate the good video you're doing. Okay. So my question is about the open season we did last time. Hello?
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, my question is about the open season we participated last time.
I'm sorry, can you say it a little slower?
Okay, I can type it there.
Or if someone else on our team caught it, they can repeat it.
Okay.
I unfortunately did not catch that. I apologize.
Yeah, Exotic, if you want to either say it a little more slowly or type it in chat.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, and Phil is having audio issues as well.
Oh, whether another open season is going to take place. Nothing's scheduled for now, but we are looking at adding some more on L2 tasks for different types of applications. So info coming on that soon. And then some other open seasons for doing like extreme load testing on the L2 itself. Could make sense at some point. So definitely stay tuned. We like the mechanic. It definitely gets a lot of engagement. It's interesting. It certainly tests the bounds of what we're working on and exposes some interesting behavior. So, yeah, stay tuned. Nothing scheduled at the moment, but definitely something I think we'll be doing again in the future. And not involving Sepulveda again, or at least not directly.
We've already broken that. So,
Yeah, been there, done that. We got what we needed from the Sepulveda load test. So anything going forward, load testing wise, would be on the L2 side itself. So worst case is we would be sending more data blobs to Sepulveda than usual, but that would not be noticeable to the rest of the network anyway.
our days of traumatizing Sepulveda have ended, so
Yep.
you can all rest easy. Did you have any other questions, Exotic?
No, I don't.
All right. Well, we thank you very much.
Mhm.
All right. Let's get our next speaker up. It is not showing me a full name, which I apologize for, but I'm going to call you to the stage. Community member with the Bitcoin emblem. R ... is what Discord is showing me because Discord. All right. Well, when we wait, we have some questions that are happening in chat. If we'd like to address those. The first I'm seeing is what about VBK Veriblock holders, please? We are your first supporters.
Definitely haven't forgot about you guys. Stay tuned for more information. But definitely something interesting in the works.
Right. I see another one that says, when will season 1 end?
No announced date yet. We have announced that our mainnet's going to be going live sometime in Q4. So season 1 will end right at or right before mainnet, but we don't have an exact date publicized for it yet.
Right. Thank you for that. I see Hadu has a question here. I know there's a ton of users and ton of nodes from each one breaking the pop miner. But could you please tell us something regarding the pop miner on browser? I think there is a joker on Hemi because everyone can simply run it.
So the pop miner right now uses the Blockstream API, and they've been rate limiting us. And so we are working on spinning up our own version of Electris on our side to replace that API. But it hasn't been a priority because we've been doing a lot of other more important stuff on the infrastructure side. But we are working on getting the web pop miner running again.
Right. Oh, I see.
For now, though, if you want to run the pop miner, run the CLI version, And again, like I said, we're not scaling up the current infrastructure because we are doing that migration. So it's still not going to work amazingly well. I think we're getting somewhere in the realm of 400 million requests per day on our backend still. But that should start working better soon once we do that infrastructure migration. And it is working because people are getting, hundreds of thousands of pop transactions through. So it's not perfect, but for now, run the CLI, and we are going to get the web pop miner back up and running soon.
Thank you very much for that. I do see we have another hand up. Shamim, I hope I'm saying that correctly. If not, I apologize. I'm going to call you to the stage. Oh, it went away, unless Josh invited him. Thank you, sir. Shamim, feel free to join the stage. All right. While nodes can run by users for pop mining.
You cut out there in the first part.
Oh, damn. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep, yeah, we can hear you fine now.
All right. Apologies about that. What is the maximum number of nodes that can be run by users for pop mining?
So theoretically, there's no limit on the number of nodes that can run, but there is limited space on Bitcoin itself. So normally, Bitcoin can process about anywhere between 25 and 3,500 transactions a block, depending on what other people are doing on the network. So in testnet, that's kind of the upper bound of how many people can do a publication within a Bitcoin block cycle. On testnet specifically, because we have the difficulty bomb issue, there's times where, and you've probably seen it on the public pop mining statistics, where you see 2 or 3 million transactions in a single day, because the difficulty bomb creates a lot more Bitcoin blocks than usual, so a lot more transactions can get in. That being said, in mainnet, the way the economics are going to work is going to be based on targeting a certain threshold of pop miners that the network wants to achieve. So whether that be 5 or 10 or 15 active pop miners, it's going to be something in that range, and the rewards are going to float based on targeting that number. And so in mainnet, we're not going to be targeting 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 active pop miners or anything like that, which is also part of why we're not too aggressively optimizing the pop mining for testnet. We're doing what we can on that, but it also doesn't translate over to mainnet technical requirements the same way that scaling out public RPCs for things like MetaMask, the Explorer, RUI, stuff like that is a little more important for the actual what's going to be used in mainnet side of it. But the BFG side still is important to scale out. That's what serves the pop miners, because it also serves Bitcoin finality information, which is what exchanges or payment processors or anyone else who's accepting transactions on the Hemi network and wants to look at Bitcoin finality for those, they're going to use those statistics, and that goes to the same backend. So there is still some value in scaling it up, but in optimizing everything around hundreds of thousands of pop miners running isn't the top priority, but it is something we're still actively working on. But yeah, mainnet number of pop miners will be definitely a lot lower because of the economics of spending real mainnet Bitcoin and the network targeting a certain level of decentralization in the pop mining process that doesn't create unnecessary emissions for the protocol while still getting as much security from Bitcoin as the protocol determines it needs.
All right. We hope that answered your question. I'm seeing a few more. Regarding T-Hemi, can you tell us about its future use? What will pop miners be awarded with for mainnet? That's from one of our community mods, YYG.
So T-Hemi is just the testing token on the Hemi network for testing the pop payout mechanic itself. So not any direct use of T-Hemi, at least nothing announced and nothing really planned. we reserve the right to maybe do something fun with it at some point and incentivize testnet, maybe, but definitely nothing guaranteed there. The main thing for the testing perspective is the points program. So if you're getting points for your pop mining, whether you do or do not get paid out THEMI or what amount of THEMI you get paid out, doesn't really matter. It's really about the points you're getting for pop mining regardless of the THEMI. So focus on the points, not the THEMI. And then on the mainnet side, in mainnet, people will be earning Hemi tokens. If there's a period of time between mainnet launch and that token being available, there will be some sort of a placeholder token, which will be, we'll announce more details about that, but it'll basically be Hemi tokens, but maybe non-transferable or something like that.
All right.
Until the token's available, yeah.
And with what Max just said, I think it's fair to say RIP are no token memes.
Still no token, but I think it's fair that the network will have a yeah. But still no token discussion. That's not the point of this Discord right now.
Perfect. The no token meme shall live on. Next question. Is the web pop miner still running? That's from Second02.
I think it's not running well because of the Blockstream API limit. I'm not sure if technically it still runs but doesn't display data. I haven't looked into that side of it, but for now, definitely use the CLI pop miner. We are working on fixing the web pop miner by moving it to our own Electris API that replaces the Blockstream API we're currently using for the stats that are displayed on the page. It's the same pop miner running under the hood. So the web pop miner is just the CLI pop miner running basically in WASM in your browser. But some of the things that run it from the JavaScript side, I'm not sure if those are working without the Blockstream API.
Right. We have one more typed question that I'm seeing before we also have two hands up for speakers. So will mainnet gas fees be the same as testnet? That's from Shimmel418.
No. Especially if you're talking about the recent Sepolia gas fees. Mainnet, so those gas fees were high because basically people can spend Sepolia ETH, which is for many people free. And so it's just a bidding war for earning points on Hemi. In mainnet, people are spending actual ETH with actual real monetary value. And so we're not going to see the same sort of, even if we are incentivizing, activities on Hemi, it's not going to be the same fee mechanic at all.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Oh, sorry. I'm seeing one more. Will the pop miner automatically adjust the fee it pays in pop transactions? That's from Foxstar.
Not currently, but that something around dynamic fee calculation is planned.
We hope that answers your question, Fox. I'm seeing a hand up. Josh, if you don't mind inviting them. All right. Hey, here we go. Hey, welcome to the stage. Your mic is currently muted, but feel free to unmute and ask your question. All right. Josh, are you seeing any other questions that need addressing currently?
Just people asking about the Hemi Air NFT. So that's more on probably the marketing or other people on the team. It was their idea to spin it up, and it's their initiative. But basically, it serves as a proof of being an early participant in the Hemi network. And so, no public plans for what we're going to do with it, but it is a early participant badge, if you will. And probably more stuff to come. I don't know the details on that side.
But we can inquire and get some clarity on that. and we can post a general update just to keep you informed. I am seeing another question from YYG. I see that many partners or organizations have posted a lot of items on the partner channel, but many of them are not what the team needs. What are the main areas of cooperation that the team currently needs?
Good question. So definitely interested in anyone who wants to build on Hemi, whether that be directly on the chain, launching any sort of smart contract protocol, something in DeFi, gaming. If you have an AI idea, we do have some applications or types of on-chain applications listed on our Gitbook that we're particularly interested in. But any interesting idea for an on-chain application, whether that's bringing in your own fork of an existing application over or doing something new from scratch, definitely interested in that. Beyond that, definitely interested in people who want to build around HVM, and we're going to be doing more stuff around HVM, demo code, demo applications, HVM and HBK, demo apps, demo applications, coding sessions, tutorials, stuff like that in the near future. So if you're interested in building using the new Bitcoin interoperability and awareness tools that we're baking into Hemi, definitely get in touch. Beyond on-chain stuff, anyone who's interested in building, third-party services like it could be like a statistics page or integrating the Hemi network into some third-party tool like a payments platform or whatever. That's always interesting. It's definitely not a complete list, and if anyone else on our team has anything else they want to chime in on there, I'm obviously more focused on the tech and the application side, but I'm definitely interested in a lot of different types of partnerships, but mostly at this point, I think we're interested in the technical ones about, building a new product or, reskinning an existing product to work on Hemi or integrate Hemi into. So.
All right.
And Phil mentioned very interested in working with artists and musicians who are interested in exploring security as a medium idea. That's a good one. So if you have any talent on the art side, definitely reach out on that one too.
Seeing one more question that Josh fed me. Can I run more than one pop miner? And I guess
you
what would
can.
be the pros and cons of doing such? Is there any benefit or?
You're allowed to. So there's edge cases where running multiple pop miners may cause problems for you. So if you're running multiple pop miners with the same private key, that can cause conflicts and errors. In some cases, it can actually make your pop mining more successful, but in other cases, it can make it less successful. Generally speaking, we recommend only running one pop miner per private key, and there will be mechanisms to de-sybil as part of the points program, and we'll announce more about that soon. But you're not going to get punished for running multiple pop miners, but you may not necessarily get rewarded for it. So do at your own risk. Do if you want to. You're welcome to experiment with running multiple pop miners with the same key if you'd like. We're not doing anything on the back end that would detect and ban you for that or anything of that nature. So you're more than welcome to do it. We generally don't recommend it, but in some edge cases, it could give you better performance. And if you're talking about running multiple pop miners with multiple keys, you're not going to be punished for it, but you may not get rewarded for that additional effort. So it's up to you.
So dealer's choice on that one, I guess. We got another one in here. If the previous private key is not working, can we start with a new private key?
Not exactly sure what you mean by that. So if you lost your private key, you will have to start with a new key because you will need your private key to claim your points eventually. And so if you don't have your private key, generate a new wallet and start pop mining with that, but you're not going to get rewards for the previous pop mining you did because you won't be able to sign something with that private key to claim your points. If you're saying you're just having an issue with the private key, like I don't think this would be the case, but if, for example, your private key had UTXOs in it that are, for whatever reason, not being recognized by the pop miner, you could move over to a different pop miner, and we will allow people to link multiple pop mining keys to their same, to one claim process. And so if you do move for whatever reason from one key to another, but you have the private keys for both or several pop miners, what we're going to do as part of the claim process is deduplicate. So basically, we're going to treat all your keys and all the pop transactions that they did cumulatively as if one address had done them, and then credit points for that cumulative performance. And so, yeah, feel free to move to a new key. But if you're having issues with it, it may not be due to the key itself. It may be just the backend scalability we're running into. If it, you're running the pop miner and today you're not seeing keystones, that may be the cause of it instead of it being an issue with your key itself. So you can reach out if you want more specific details on the problem you're running into. But in general, a private key should never break in any sense. So the only reasons would really be if you either lost it or you just decided to move to a different key because it's the one you're using for EVM and you don't want to be using that in the pop miner anymore and you want to generate a new key or whatever.
All right. I'm actually seeing a question related to that, and I apologize if it's already been covered, but can we mine with 2 private keys? Will both IDs be rewarded?
You can mine with 2 private keys. Whether they get rewarded will depend on, if both of them cumulatively are still lower than the daily points earning threshold for a pop key, then you will get rewards from those 2 addresses combined together. But any work that they do that's duplicated between them, so if they both mine the same keystone, for example, you'll only get credited for mining that keystone once.
And here's a question we missed a little ways back. If in theory, there's not a specific number of maximum nodes, say it's related to block TX, how can there be Sybil filters? Do you think the team could even put it in the official doc so all community can stay out of being classified as a bot?
Yeah, we'll provide more info on the anti-Sybil mechanism soon. The high level for the community is you're not going to be punished for engaging in Sybil activity other than potentially not being rewarded for it.
Right.
We are also, I don't know if we've announced this publicly, but I'll just put it out there because I think it's probably relevant and people want to know about it. So what we're doing is we're going to implement an anti-Sybil mechanism that is going to essentially determine which people are unique individuals and allow up to the maximum points for each individual based on the combination of their one or more addresses they use for pop mining, one or more addresses they used for EVM. And that's another question I've seen a lot, so I'll address it here. You can use a different key for pop mining than the one you use in MetaMask for doing on L2 activities. You'll be able to link them together under one, global identity, in air quotes, for the claim process. We are also going to do a small pile of points for people who are doing Sybil activities. That's like a load testing pile. And so if you want to play the load testing game and do Sybil activities, you're welcome to go ahead and go for it. You're not going to be punished for it, but the vast lion's share of the rewards are going to go to unique individuals doing the points program as specified. So more details on that soon, though.
YYG, I see you have another question. I just want to go to one more that I think Max is going to be super excited about. All right, Max, I hope you're sitting down. What is the role of the Hemi virtual machine in the Hemi network? Talk about the HVM, buddy.
I'm glad you asked. So the HVM, you can think of it high level as an EVM with a Bitcoin full node inside of it. And so the way it works is basically, well, to take a step back, if you look at how Bitcoin interoperability works on other networks like Ethereum and many of the other Bitcoin L2s, what they're doing is basically called Bitcoin header relay, which is a system where you have third-party relayers who take Bitcoin headers from the Bitcoin network, they relay them to the network, to the L2 or to Ethereum or whatever, to a smart contract, which then tracks Bitcoin consensus in sort of a lightweight client sort of way. And the only thing you can do with that type of Bitcoin awareness is prove that a certain transaction exists in what we believe to be the Bitcoin canonical chain based on the headers that have been relayed. And so it's super limited. And when you think about developing on Ethereum, if you've ever written in Solidity, the amount of chain introspection you have into what's going on, say, Ethereum or inside the EVM you're running on, it is a lot more advanced. So you can go and you can look at the balance of an address, or you can look at specific variables, or data that's returned from a smart contract function of another contract. And with Bitcoin, obviously, we don't have smart contracts in that stateful sense, and so that part doesn't translate one-to-one. But there's a lot of information about Bitcoin that's not cryptographically provable against just the canonical Bitcoin block with some cryptographic proof. And so with HVM, what we're doing is we're running a full Bitcoin node inside the EVM that smart contracts can talk directly to. So you can use that to look at not only, does a transaction exist? You can get additional information about that transaction or the parts of it you care about without having to relay it and verify an expensive Merkle proof. But you can also look at stuff like the UTXO table and Bitcoin balances, which you can't do with a Bitcoin header relay system. And in the future, we're going to be adding more features to HVM that also allow you to look at meta-protocol information. And meta-protocols are things like, runes, ordinals, BRC20s. And so you'd be able to say, for example, what's the transaction history of this inscribed Satoshi? Or, what is the BRC20 balance of this address for this specific token, stuff like that. And so that additional introspection into what's actually happening on Bitcoin and what's not only what transactions exist on Bitcoin, but what is the processed end result of those transactions occurring along with all the other transactions on the Bitcoin network. That Bitcoin awareness lets you build all kinds of new cool Bitcoin aware applications or Bitcoin interoperability infrastructure. And so what most projects are doing at the protocol level, where they say, we're building, say, a BitVM bridge and we're enshrining it in our protocol. Those kinds of things you could go do in Solidity yourself on Hemi. So if you wanted to build some construct around a BitVM custodianship system, or you want to build a non-custodial Bitcoin DEX or a Bitcoin staking system, all of that, you could do that directly in the EVM using that Bitcoin awareness that HVM provides. And then HBK, so think of HVM as like the low-level, in Solidity kind of assembly level, if you will, talking directly to the Bitcoin node. And then HBK abstracts that and makes it easier to use. So it gives you functions like, get UTXOs for an address, and you can send in a string encoded Bitcoin address and, pagination information. So HVM, low-level Bitcoin interoperability. HBK makes that easier to actually use in smart contracts.
Great question. Thank you for that. I see two more questions on deck right now. If you're all right on time, Max, I just want to double check.
Yep, good on my side.
Okay. How does the team define cheating by users to gain points? Can you inform users in advance of some precautions when gaining points, and what behaviors are prohibited? From YYG.
Good question. So, I mean, there could always be weird edge cases of stuff we didn't think about that we have to address. But in general, you're never going to be punished for anything you do. Like, for example, if someone was trying to do a DDoS attack or whatever, like stuff like that's not okay, where you're trying to block other participants from using the system or, things of that nature. But in general, you're not going to be punished for any sort of, points farming activity, whether that being, if you're using a couple different addresses and you may think you exceeded the, points limit for a person across all the addresses, stuff like that's not important. We'll deduplicate that on our end. You're not going to be punished for it. So in general, don't worry too much about that. As long as you're not doing something that's like actively malicious against other participants on the network. But again, you may not get much benefit from doing that sort of activity. Like I said, we will have that very small separate points pile for people who are doing civil activities where they would get rewarded for, producing tons of transaction load on the network, stuff like that. But in general, the vast majority of the points are going to go to unique individuals under the bounds of our points program as described. But you won't be punished for going above that. you will go up to the threshold of what you can earn as an individual, and then any activity that spills over will go into that very small load testing incentives pile.
All right. We have another one from Alpha. Why did you choose to build an L2 when everyone is now working on L3s? Are L3s faster?
Good question. So it depends what you're trying to do. And so for us, we're trying to build a connective tissue between Bitcoin and Ethereum. And so to build something like that, you want to be directly on top of both networks. You don't want to be sitting as an L3. But we will be using L3s as part of our Hemi ecosystem and letting other people launch their own Hemi. Well, it's permissionless, so we don't have to let you do it. You can just do it yourself. But we'll be providing code and resources for people to launch their own L3s on Hemi. And so if you want to launch a application-specific chain that is, say, optimized for on-chain AI, running on-chain AI models, or it's optimized for throughput and low transaction fees at the cost of decentralization, or whatever trade-offs you want to make in your specific chain's design, you'll be able to launch an L3 on Hemi that optimizes for what your application needs. And that L3, if you want it, will still have access to Bitcoin security via proof of proof. It'll inherit Bitcoin security through Hemi as a security aggregation layer. And your L3 will also, if you want it, have access to HVM and HBK in a way that's synchronized with the entire Hemi ecosystem. So the idea there being the Hemi L2, any Hemi L3s, L4s you launch on top of L3s, whatever, those would all have a synchronized view of Bitcoin for their own embedded HVM, which you could disable the HVM if you didn't want that feature, but that'll come by default. They'll all get POP security through Hemi, or Bitcoin security using POP through Hemi. And also they can make trade-offs for stuff like DA. And so Hemi right now is using Ethereum for DA, which is great from a reliability and security perspective, but it is somewhat more expensive than other DA solutions. Right now, blobs are pretty cheap on Ethereum, so it doesn't matter that much unless you're doing like a gaming-focused chain where you have, each movement in a game is an on-chain transaction or something crazy like that. But that space will fill up in the future as more L2s launch on Ethereum, or other things even aside from L2s use blob space. Like we saw when blobs first launched, there was the blob scriptions craze for like 2 days where people are using that data for basically NFT information. And so right now the fees for blobs are very low. There will be competition for that will increase the DA fee, which is passed on to users of the L2. And so you'll be able to use L3s that have different DA solutions and still plug into the Hemi network for faster, cheaper transactions, but giving up some of that security offered by the Ethereum DA. And obviously you could build an L2 that uses a different DA system too, but just talking about the specific trade-offs we made for our L2 and then the benefits you could get and the trade-offs for going to potential future L3s in the Hemi ecosystem.
Right. Our next question is from Foxstar. This is a good one. What are the upcoming, they're all good ones, but this one in particular is, I'm excited about hearing this too. What are the upcoming milestones or developments we can expect from Hemi in the next few months?
Good question. So we will be putting out a more formal roadmap pretty soon with more details, but high level, we have 5 stages of HVM. So we're currently on stage 1, which is what we're calling essentials. It's the core Bitcoin awareness stuff, UTXOs, transactions, balances, and then we're going to have a phase for, and these are not in order, but a phase for Bitcoin event notifications, which would allow a smart contract to subscribe to events on Bitcoin and receive a callback automatically generated by the Hemi network itself when that event occurs. So for example, if you're building say a non-custodial DEX, you could say your smart contract could subscribe to an event when this address receives an incoming transaction, or this address sends an outgoing transaction, or more specifically when this UTXO gets spent, or whatever makes sense for your application, instead of a user, whether it be the buyer or seller in the non-custodial DEX or whatever applies to your specific application, instead of them having to go and trigger a transaction to say, hey, I did the thing, go check Bitcoin and do the next step in the application's process. the application can subscribe to that event, and so it'll automatically get processed. So when, say, that UTXO gets spent, the Hemi virtual machine will generate a callback transaction that gets processed as part of the chain automatically. And then the other phases will be for meta protocol support. So adding support for, currently on the roadmap is runes and ordinals. And then we're hopefully going to do BRC20, but the issue with BRC20 is the protocol hasn't really completely solidified yet. There's still kind of a soft social consensus where the indexers for BRC20s all agree to an update to the protocol, and they update the indexers, and that kind of acts as the agreed upon latest version of the BRC20 protocol. And so until that ossifies, we can't really embed it in the Hemi protocol itself, but as soon as that ossifies, that's also on the roadmap. Beyond HVM, we're going to be doing stuff like decentralizing the sequencer. Some more info on that soon, but we're going to be using some variant of proof of stake, so people will be able to run nodes, stake assets, run a node, and become a sequencer on the network. We're going to be decentralizing the publisher and the batcher roles, or the proposer and the batcher roles, which combined together we call the publisher on the Hemi network. So that's going to be decentralized. We're in the process of making the Hemi network zero knowledge provable. And so that'll be able to be used for both Bitcoin and Ethereum settlement. So on the Ethereum side, we'll basically be able to use ZK proofs for initial verification of Hemi state, and then have a fallback to the fault dispute model if there's an issue with the ZK proof. And so that gives us more security, some speed improvements, and also still keeps the protocol robust against there being some, say, new attack on a specific ZK proving protocol or whatever. And then on the Bitcoin side, ZK settlement to Bitcoin, and I say that in air quotes because it's not truly ZK settlement, it's optimistically verified ZK settlement. But we're going to be, we're working on our own version of BitVM that uses HVM to replace superblock emulation with basically Hemi's censorship resistant view of Bitcoin consensus for those ZK proofs back to Bitcoin. And so we'll be announcing more info on that soon, but BitVM custodianship mechanism for high values of BTC and also high value deposits of other Bitcoin native assets that are fungible like BRC20s and runes. And also Chain Builder, which is our L3 plus ecosystem toolkit. So that'll allow people to spin up those L3s that I was talking about earlier. And that's also on the roadmap.
Awesome. I see Josh is furiously typing me something. It's questions. All right, here we go. Will people need to pay to run pop miners on mainnet?
Yes. So in mainnet, you'll be spending mainnet Bitcoin to pay the transaction fees to publish Hemi data to Bitcoin mainnet.
Right. What consensus mechanism does Hemi network use, and how does it ensure decentralization?
So there's a couple different parts to decentralization. So there's the sequencer, who actually creates the blocks. There's the proposer and batcher, which we call the publisher, which is who makes sure that data gets onto the Ethereum chain for settlement, and who can post bad data or who can post data if somebody else fails to post it. And then there's, in Hemi's specific case, the Bitcoin security inheritance, which we're doing with pop mining, and how that inheritance works. So pop mining is decentralized from day one, as you guys have already experienced on testnet. The sequencer decentralization is on our roadmap. We'll announce timing for that shortly when we announce our full roadmap to the community, but that is something we are actively working towards. And like I mentioned earlier, that will be using a variant of proof of stake. So that's on the sequencer decentralization side. And then on the publisher side, initially we are going. So on the sequencer side, initially we are the only sequencer, as is Optimism and most other L2s at this point. But we are working on decentralizing that. That is a very high priority for us. And then on the publisher side, initially Hemi will be the only publisher, but we're going to very quickly move to Optimism's model of allowing multiple publishers with a bonding system. And then longer term, we have some changes we want to make to the publisher decentralization. So again, when we talk about publisher, there's two roles. There's proposing and batching. So Optimism currently has proposing as something that anyone can do if they put up a stake that can be slashed if their state root claim is incorrect. And so we'll be adopting that shortly after mainnet. And then for the batcher side, right now that is still centralized on most L2s. And we will be decentralizing that component as well with a staking component. So you have to basically stake assets, and then if you stake enough assets, you'd be allowed to do publisher transactions for DA purposes, which would allow you to get part of the, or most of the DA fees that the network collects, plus some additional emissions.
Rick had to disappear, so I'll ask the next question. What specific type of layer 2 technology is the Hemi network based on? Optimistic rollups, ZK rollups, plasma, or state channels?
Good question. So right now, Hemi's based off the Optimism tech stack. And so that means initially it's going to be optimistic settlement to Ethereum. And then on the Bitcoin side, it's initially going to be over-collateralized multisig vaults. And we're working with Symbiotic and Swell for using economic security from the Ethereum landscape denominated in Bitcoin to secure those vaults. Then longer term, we are working on ZK proving, like I mentioned earlier. So Hemi is going to transition to a ZK first optimistic failback model. So it's going to be ZK proving for Ethereum settlement, but somebody can post a bounty if they believe that the ZK proof is wrong and make the system fall back to optimistic verification in the worst case. And then on the Bitcoin side, that ZK settlement, again in air quotes because it's not technically ZK settlement, it's optimistic ZK settlement, but that would be using a modified version of the BitVM to BitVM bridge paradigm that leverages HVM and moves some of the incentives to some of the incentive enforcement to the EVM level instead of the Bitcoin transaction graph level. And then for L3s, we'll support a variety of different types of L3s with different tech stacks. So the first L3 that'll be on the Hemi network will be basically a clone of the Hemi L2, but just running as an L3. So that'll be optimistic and then eventually ZK. And then we'll also, beyond that, support additional types of, if you want to spin up a plasma chain, we are going to do some stuff with state channels, both EVM native state channels and stuff that can interact with Bitcoin state channels like Lightning. But that's kind of a separate thing from the L2 design itself.
And a third question from Alpha. How does Hemi handle data availability challenges associated with layer 2 tech solutions?
So DA is going to be on Hemi, and data availability challenges aren't really relevant until we eventually move off of Ethereum DA to our own DA solution. So long term, and this is, far out, highly speculative, but we do want to spin up a Hemi native DA system once there's enough economic power on Hemi to justify it. And when we move to that system, then the DA challenges would be based on however that system's built, which is still far enough out that it's not really worth diving into or speculating about.
Oh, right.
And to answer your question, in the flip side, any settlement that happens from Hemi to either Bitcoin or Ethereum will be based on the DA for the Hemi blocks that constitute all the state transitions up to the point that we care about for settlement, provably existing on Ethereum. So there won't be challenges because all we care about is that the data is on Ethereum in the first place. But for settlement, things will only settle if the data is available on Ethereum for all those state transitions. And you can prove those very efficiently even in the ZK case. So when we do ZK settlement for BitVM, for example, part of the ZK proof would be a ZK proof that the data for all the blocks that constitute the Hemi chain exist in the canonical Ethereum chain.
All right. We're seeing one more hand up to speak on stage. So we're going to call you to stage to answer your question, but then we're going to wrap things up just because we're right around the hour mark, and I want to be respectful of people's times. So you have been invited to speak. Please feel free to ask your question. Max will answer it, and then we're just going to wrap things up for this week. This will be a reoccurring thing. We may be switching up the times and days, but for the foreseeable future, we are planning on doing this weekly. I hope the community finds this helpful, and it's something you guys are excited about. If you still have a question, please accept the request to join the stage. Right. Oh, here we go. Oh, I think Josh got him. Right, we'll give it another 30 seconds. Oh, Pete, here we go. I don't know why I got so excited. Sorry about that. If you wouldn't mind, just unmute your microphone. I see the muted icon, and feel free to ask your question. Did you still have a question?
Yeah, if you're talking, by the way, we can't hear you, although it looks like you are off mute now. But check if you have a hardware mute on your microphone or something.
Gotta love Discord audio.
It's great. I think for our first AMA, for the first 10 minutes, I couldn't talk.
Yeah, for the first AMA, no one could hear me, but my audio picked up on the recording.
Yeah, so same was mine. And there was some other setting. I forgot what it was. There was something buried in the settings I needed to change.
Yeah, so that was real fun to edit.
I think it was the push to talk, yeah. I think that was my problem.
All right, it's not looking like we're getting a resolution on that. If you wouldn't mind, and I apologize, if you could just type your question out. But I think for now, just because we're right around the hour mark, we should wrap things up for this week. But I just want to thank everyone for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Max for an outro, and then we will see you in general chat and all the other channels, and also next week.
Cool, thanks, Rick. Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff going on behind the scenes. For some people who joined late and may have missed the intro, our open season was a huge success, so really appreciate everyone who participated in that and made it possible. We got a lot of great testing out of it, and we have now returned Sepolia to its former glory. We got a lot of really cool stuff in the pipeline, so if you're interested in developing applications on Hemi, especially around HVM, we're going to be launching a bunch of materials about that relatively soon. I'm not sure the exact timeline, but we have some cool tech demos that will be available in kind of an online editor to play around with, calling HVM and HBK endpoints in JavaScript. So that's going to be nice and give people a lot more visibility and kind of hands-on understanding of how those technologies work. We're also going to be doing some workshops. We're going to be doing some tutorial videos around HVM and some stuff with on the DevRel side. Again, more details to come soon, but different types of coding challenges. If you're interested in building around HVM and you want to get started, we do have some information in our docs, and we'll be improving that. And also, when we're available, we're always happy to answer questions about it, but we will turn that into something more formal with events for people to ask questions specifically on the development side. And so stay tuned for those. And Other than that, yeah, just a lot of exciting stuff on the back end, working on improving HVM features. We're doing an infrastructure migration, so hopefully that will solve some of the infrastructure scalability and stability problems we've been having recently. So stay tuned for updates on that, and appreciate everyone for coming out.
Yeah, thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it. We hope you got a lot out of this. I know I did. Just as a closing note, the results of the first official meme contest will be announced hopefully later today, potentially tomorrow at the latest. So stay tuned for that, as well as other new activities that are actively being pitched by community members, helpers, and mods. So there's going to be a lot more going on. Try to keep people engaged, as testnet be testnet. And so with that said, thank you so much, Max, for doing this. We'll see you next week, and also in general chat, of course. And to everyone, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for coming out. We'll see you next week.